If you've ever wondered how Stable Diffusion and generative AI art works and why sometimes it produces these totally normal, not weird at all looking hands, you're in the right spot. Let's jump right in. Now, if you've worked with these systems before, you're used to this idea of providing a text prompt like this one, where you say realistic, detailed chocolate sprinkled donuts on a white plate, and then the system does some work and it spits out an image that matches the prompt. But how does this actually work on the inside and what's going on behind the scenes? What the heck is Stable Diffusion? Now, to start off, you have to understand something that's known in physics and chemistry as diffusion. And this is an idea that applies to thermodynamics, fluid dynamics, and it's this idea where you can start with something like a clear beaker of water. You can add a few drops of dye, and that dye diffuses throughout the liquid until it reaches a state of equilibrium. Now, you know this has happened because when you look at the beaker, it's completely blue, or whatever color dye you've put into it. And with Stable Diffusion, it's almost like we're starting with that blue colored dye water, and we're trying to get back to a clear liquid that we started with. And that's going to make a little more sense here in a minute. Now, we start by training a neural network with something called forward diffusion. And to do this, you take a whole bunch of images you find from the internet and you pass them through a neural network, and each time it loops through, you're adding noise to the image, this kind of static that you see here. And it's called Gaussian noise, and you don't just do this one time. You loop the images through the neural network over and over, and each time it's adding a different distribution of that Gaussian noise. And you don't just do this to one image, you do this to billions of images, and you do this thousands of times per image. Now, eventually what ends up happening is you get to a point where the neural network can do this in reverse. So it can start with an image that's almost entirely noise. It can loop back through it and remove noise until it gets to a point where it's not quite the original image, but it's an image that resembles one of the original images. But I don't really care how much you train this or how sophisticated the neural network is. You can't go straight from a completely noise-filled image to a clear image like you would in this picture. So it turns out what's actually happening behind the scenes is that we're not actually training a neural network to predict an image. It's not actually generating an image. What we've done is we've trained a noise prediction neural network. So at each step, if you start with an image that's completely pure noise and you loop it through the neural network, what it does is it identifies the Gaussian noise in that image. And you can see that right here in this first pass. And then the neural network removes that noise from the image. You loop this through again, and each step of the way, it identifies the noise in the image and it removes it. Eventually, you get to a point where you have an image that's mostly not noise. That doesn't answer the entire picture, right? That doesn't tell us how it actually steers the image from being complete noise over to something that's human discernible and looks like what we added in our text prompt. After all, what we typically start with is one of those text prompts. So in this case, I said macro close-up photo of a bee drinking water on the edge of a hot tub. Now, this is a really specific prompt, and you can see the image generated is really good. You wouldn't know looking at this that this wasn't macro photography of an actual bee. How do we get there, and what ties these words to the images that we're generating with the neural network? It turns out that there's another key element you have to pay attention to when you're training these neural networks. See, you're not just training the neural network with the images, you're also using the alt text associated with those images. And if you've ever been on the internet and you've seen images, if you right click on them or if you view the page source, you can often see alt text. And this is usually used for search engines crawling the pages so that they understand what the image is about, what the keywords that are associated with that image are about. These can also be used by screen readers for people that are visually impaired so they can understand what the context of that image is. So when you pair the images that we're training the neural network with the text that's associated with them, you can start to build up a picture of how this all connects together. On top of that, there's also this concept of reinforcement training, or RL with HF or RLHF, which stands for reinforcement learning with human feedback. And this is a really powerful concept that starts to make these Stable Diffusion models much more powerful over time. To understand how this works a little bit more, let's take a look at Midjourney. So you can see we asked Midjourney to create an image of Jim Carrey wearing a blue shirt pole vaulting. And when it returns the images, it actually returns not one, but 4 images. And this is the really important bit. If you were to click upscale for one of these images because you think it's the best image that it generated, it's going to return the result. And then from there, if you click favorite, for example, or you download the image, this provides Midjourney with a really high quality signal that this prompt, Jim Carrey wearing a blue shirt pole vaulting, really matches closely with this image. So when they train their new models, when they start building these new Stable Diffusion diffusion models, they can use these new images associated with those text prompts, and they have this feedback loop that's able to feed back into the system and improve their models over time. If you have thousands of people using these systems creating millions of images, you can get enough training data to improve these models at a really high rate of speed. And here's why that's so vital to these models. So now that we have our neural network that's really awesome at removing noise from images, we need a way to steer it. And we do that through something called conditioning. And the purpose of conditioning is to actually steer that noise predictor so that it removes the noise and ends up creating the image that we had with that prompt. And the reason we're able to do that is because we have those connections between words and images. And because these neural networks are trained on billions of images, they know some of these concepts. Like a macro close-up is a very tight shot of something. A photo of a bee is a winged insect. Drinking water is something that it can also produce because it knows the concept of fluids and water. And then on the edge of a hot tub, it also has the idea of a hot tub and what it means to stand on the edge of one. What ends up happening is all of these layers stacked together end up steering the neural network so that when it removes noise from the image, it does so in such a way that by the end of the result, you get this beautiful macro close-up photo of this bee. And here's a real-time example of how this works. The prompt for this was a photo of a cat. And you can see that the image starts off with complete noise, and then as it steps through and iterates through, it's steered until it gets to a point where the noise removed from the image has created an image of an actual cat. And the results from these neural networks in Stable Diffusion can be really stunning. Objects that you could never possibly have in real life, as well as objects that are photorealistic and you can't tell the difference between those in reality. Like this picture of this burger. You could use this in a food ad and nobody would know that it's not a real image of a burger. And that's not to say that this always works out. Sometimes it produces really bad images, and when it goes wrong, it can go really wrong. In these cases, because I scaled these images up, it didn't know what to do, so it just started multiplying different body parts until it produced an image that filled the entire screen space. And sometimes these get really weird, as you can see. So what happens if you want to train your own neural network with this, or train your own checkpoint or safe tensor file? You've probably heard those terms thrown around. And to understand that, you have to understand a little bit about a neural network. So here's a basic neural network. You've got this input layer on the far left side. This is where you put in all the training data, all the base images that you want to start with. And then on the far right side, you get the output. Now this is what's put out. This is the image that hopefully matches the prompt that you stuck into this. And in that middle layer, that's where all the magic happens. And we don't quite understand everything that happens in there. It's just really complex vector space math. And since some of these neural networks can have billions, possibly even trillions of parameters, it becomes very complex very quickly, and it's hard to dig through what's happening inside. This means it's also incredibly expensive and time consuming from a resource perspective to train these neural networks. But fortunately, there's this idea of a checkpoint, and this is really cool. So think about it. If you're training one of these models, what happens if it fails midway through? Well, you don't want to lose all that work that you had. So what ends up happening is every so often there's this idea of a checkpoint. And you can think about this like the auto save in one of your document files, right? What it does is it creates a snapshot of all of the weights inside of a neural network. And those weights are really the magic that happens. You can think about every single one of those green dots in the middle as a different knob that you can twist and turn to a different setting. And so by taking a snapshot of where all those knobs are twisted, you can get all the weights of the Stable Diffusion model saved as a snapshot in time. Now, the really cool thing here is that because these all have that checkpoint mechanism built into them, you can take any of those base models and you can start training where they left off. So in our case, what you can do is you can go grab those base Stable Diffusion models on a site like Hugging Face. You can fire them up in a cloud instance on something like Collab, and then you can take some pictures of yourself, like these super awesome photos of totally the same person. You can load those into the model and then you can start training these. And the cool thing is, with around 15 to 30 pictures, you can train a model enough to where you can generate images of yourself or any other person, place, or thing. And these are the results. None of these are real images of me. These are all AI Stable Diffusion generated, but I've tricked a lot of people with these. A lot of my friends and even family members have been like, yeah, these are great photos of you. I don't get what the point point is, and they couldn't pick these out of a lineup with my regular real images. And now these same techniques are starting to be applied to video. So now we've got AI generated video. This is a demo from NVIDIA where you can see the prompt and then some of the videos that are generated from it. And we're still in the early stages of this technology, but you can imagine that Stable Diffusion has only been around for a few months and the quality has gone from pretty bad to photorealistic. So to be at this spot with generative AI video already is pretty impressive. And this really brings us to the ethics of all this. Now, a couple weeks ago, I put up these images as a joke of Elon Musk and the CEO of General Motors, Mary Barra. I put these up and thought it'd be funny because obviously these two would never be seen together, but it caused quite a stir. And even Elon Musk himself responded and said, also, I'd never wear that outfit. Not only that, but a lot of different news sources picked this up. It was on the front page of Snopes, CNN Business, and even Reuters reporters reached out to me. And this is where things get weird, right? Because we've got elections coming up. And these photos that I posted had over 30 million views, and most people couldn't tell that these weren't real. So what happens in a world where we can't trust the images and the videos and even the voices that we hear online? Well, we're already there. I mean, just a few days ago, a Drake song dropped and it's gone viral. There's tens of millions of listens to this song. Drake had nothing to do with it. It was completely trained off of an AI model. Now, I'm not a pessimist with this technology. I think it's really powerful and it's going to be world changing. I think in a few years, we're going to get to a place where we have generative TV shows and even generative blockbuster movies where you can insert yourself into the movie and even your friends and family members, or have it write a story on the fly for you. But we're also going to have a lot of disinformation and a lot of media mistrust. So we've all got to be really careful and diligent about how this technology is used and how we think about applying the future of artificial intelligence to the world around us. My hope is that it actually brings us all closer together. And instead of relying on what we see online, we get more interactive with real humans. We go out and we talk to people, we have discussions, we have debates, and we do it in person because that's something we can trust. At least unless we're in a simulation, at which point, I don't know, this all goes out the window. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'm Brian Levitt. This is All Your Tech AI. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Thank you all so much. See ya.